The audio recordings obtained by Axios are offering a rare look behind closed doors at some comments that U.S. Senator Ted Cruz made criticizing President Donald Trump's tariff policy and Vice President J.D. Vance while he was in a private meeting with donors. Alex Eisenstedt is the senior political reporter for Axios. He broke this story over the weekend. Alex, thanks so much for taking some time out to talk with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, a lot of people, we know you're not going to delve out your sources, and tell us how you got this recording, but tell us a little bit about the recording and what exactly, you hear the senator saying.
Yeah, sure. So there were several recordings we obtained that happened during two separate donor meetings that Cruz had last year. And the recordings were quite revealing. There were two real themes that came out. One, which is that Cruz warned Trump that his tariffs could potentially lead to political disaster for him, leading to Republicans losing control of Congress, and then potentially leading to Trump being impeached. The second thing we learned from these recordings is that Cruz is very aggressively attacking Vice President J.D. Vance. And that's notable because Cruz is laying the groundwork for a potential run for president in 2028. And if he were to run, that would likely set him on a collision course with Vice President Vance, who of course would be the favorite to win the Republican nomination. So these recordings really pull back the curtain on some very interesting dynamics that Cruz is at the center of right now.
Now, of course, I do have to ask you, especially in this age of AI, how did you verify that the recordings were actually Senator Cruz?
Sure. So before publication, we went to Senator Cruz's office. We gave them plenty of time to respond, and they gave us a statement that did not deny that Senator Cruz said these things.
Yeah. And, let's talk a little bit about the tariff policy. The concern that he has is that it's going to negatively impact Republicans in the midterms, right? Just because of the cost.
Yeah. And that's a view that a lot of Republicans privately share. And that's why it was interesting to hear these recordings, because Senator Cruz is just so frank and so sharp in terms of how he relays this. He relays a call that he and a few other senators had with the president in which Cruz warned Trump that these tariffs could lead to his impeachment. He says that Trump swore at him in response, using a word that I'm not going to air on your TV program.
Right. You cannot say that word on the TV program. Correct. Yeah. People can go and read your article if they want to see exactly what that language was. I do have to ask you, these comments were made, these recordings were taken earlier, you said last year. So why now are we just now hearing about it?
It's unclear. The sources, give you information at various points, and we unearthed this information very recently, and so that's why we decided to publish it now, because that's when we got the information. We still think, despite the fact that these comments happened around a year ago or a little less than a year ago, that they're still notable and noteworthy and important for our readers to know about.
Particularly when you look at how Senator Cruz positions himself, certainly publicly, as a very big supporter of the president. How important do you think it was for donors to hear him say that he's against tariffs as he's laying the groundwork for that potential presidential run?
Yeah, so a couple of things here that are important. One is that the donor set does not like tariffs, just generally speaking. They were uncomfortable. The business world writ large, the corporate world, of which many donors are a part of, we're not happy with tariffs. They thought it was bad for business, bad for the stock market, bad for their bottom line. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if Cruz does want to run for president in 2028, he's going to have to find some ways to distance himself, to distinguish himself from the Trump administration. You have to assume that Trump is going to most likely endorse J.D. Vance. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but he's going to endorse some member of his administration to succeed him as president. It most likely wouldn't be someone outside of his administration like Ted Cruz. And so that means that if Ted Cruz wants to run for president, he's going to have to emerge as an alternative to this administration. And so what you've seen over the last year is Cruz has shown a willingness to distinguish himself, to distance himself from the administration on certain issues. And just today, the senator, for example, expressed some measure of criticism over how the administration has been handling ICE. And so that's a recent example of how Cruz is looking to get some distance to show some independence from the White House.
All right. Alex Eisenstadt, senior reporter for Axios. We thank you so much for taking some time out to talk with us today.
Thank you.
All right, so Senator Cruz's team sent us a statement about this whole ordeal. It reads in part, quote, Senator Cruz is the president's greatest ally in the Senate and battles every day in the trenches to advance his agenda. It went on to say these attempts at sowing division are pathetic and getting boring, end quote.